Well, today was meant to be the final hearing in Vijay Mallya's extradition case in London. Turns out there will be another hearing which will take place on the 12th of September because there was a kahani mein twist. So what happened today was essentially that Vijay Mallya's lawyers have argued that conditions in Indian jails are not very good. In fact, Vijay Mallya has complained that there is very poor natural light in the Arthur Road jail, which is supposed to be waiting for him if he does indeed return. So the UK judge has now asked for a video of this cell in the Arthur Road prison in Mumbai. The judge was also provided with photographs of barrack number 12, but wants to know if there is indeed ample natural light. India's counsel said the jail conditions do comply with all human rights guidelines, and that he will be put up in barracks with fresh air and light, and he'll also get, because you wanted to know this, a Western style toilet facility, clean bedding, etc., etc. This is what Vijay Mallya told reporters after that hearing today.
I have not included any clemency plea or a plea bargain in my unconditional offer to the Karnataka High Court. All we have said to the court, here are the assets worth 14,000 crores. Please sell them under judicial supervision, pay the banks, pay the other creditors. That's it. There are no further requests at all.
Are you scared there might be a nightmare scenario where they take your money and still try and extradite?
That is the government of India's decision. They have their legal advisors, I have mine.
And joining us on the program tonight to talk about this entire saga with Vijay Mallya, and then of course there's Mehul Choksi, Nirav Modi, the list goes on and on. We have Sherbir Pranag, anti-corruption lawyer, joining us from Mumbai tonight, Raghav Avasthi, lawyer and member of the RSS, Mr. Biswajit Bhattacharya back with us tonight, the former Additional Solicitor General of India, and Jaiveer is staying with us from the Congress. Sherbir Pranag, firstly, your thoughts on what happened in the court today. Now they want to know whether he's going to have ample light and fresh air. To many of us here, this, actually just seemed to be a bit of a farce that played out.
Well, Nidhi, this doesn't come as a significant surprise. The UK courts have always taken a fairly stringent view of prison conditions. Even recently, another extradition plea by the Indian government was recently turned down due to lack of medical facilities at Indian prisons. The lesser said, the better about our prison conditions. And barrack number 12, though a significant improvement from other prisons, is not going to altogether be very different. So the plea pertaining to the issue of natural light, while limited, goes to the broader point of the human rights conditions in Indian prisons, which has always been a bone of contention as far as the UK courts are concerned. In the past as well, in our fairly unsuccessful track record of seeking extraditions from the United Kingdom, the moot point has typically been due process issues, length of trial, prison conditions. So this doesn't really come out as a surprise, and while it may appear that on a simple issue such as how much natural light there is, and since there were some photographs which the court apparently said because they were black and white we couldn't adjudicate on the matter, I don't really see this as a farce or gimmickry, but rather goes to the very heart.
The reason I said that is because, frankly, human rights activists
that an accused person would take.
Sorry to interrupt. The reason I said that is because, frankly, human rights activists all over the world have pointed out about pathetic jail conditions, frankly, even in the UK and the US. Now, you're saying that regardless of that, the problem here is that this is an issue that has, stuck with British courts and could then possibly become a stumbling block. And I want to ask Mr. Biswajit Bhattacharya about that could we actually possibly see a situation where Vijay Mallya is not extradited to India because Arthur Road jail doesn't have natural light?
Well, there is a distinct possibility, Nidhi, and the British Human Rights Act 1998 also lays down certain strict norms about what basic human rights are. And there are several factors which ultimately the court will consider, whether there is an extraneous consideration, whether there is a human rights violation, and at the end of the day, even this extradition order will have to be signed by the British Home Secretary, which is basically an appealable order from the High Court to the Court of Appeal. So extradition per se is still
a long way away.
A long way away. But my point is slightly, different. Vijay Mallya has made an open statement today that he has submitted a list of 14,000 crores worth of asset before the Karnataka High Court. Now, this statement should be taken very, very seriously by the authorities in India concerned, and he has also made a statement that those assets should be sold under the supervision of the court, and basically his debts, which is about 1.1 billion pounds sterling, that should be liquidated. So, therefore, there are two aspects. One is extradition, punishment, but the overriding consideration, according to me,
is the financial one.
Is the financial one, and Indian authorities, the consortium of Indian banks led by the State Bank of India, have already tasted victory in the British High Court.
Yeah,
and the Court of Appeal,
they can seize his assets there.
Yes, Justice Flocks of Court of Appeal has declined to hear that appeal, saying that Vijay Mallya does not really have any ground. So, therefore, the legal options of Vijay Mallya are sinking, and British courts have taken a very, very positive and strong view.
That may be the case, and you're right. The financial aspect may be practically something that is easier and faster to deal with. But Raghav Avasthi, the point is politically, it is very important to be seen to get people like Mr. Mallya back, to have them face justice here.
Yeah, that is true, and this is the reason why this matter is being pursued as seriously as it is being pursued. And I think secondly, what we also need to keep in mind is that the NDA government has put in place legislation to ensure that fugitives like Mr. Mallya are not allowed to go scot-free next time. And I have full faith. Obviously, the Act cannot have retrospective effect unless it explicitly says so. And therefore, since the system has now been put in place, there will hopefully be no recurrence in the future. And secondly, I think as far as the attitude of the British judge is concerned, I'm quite surprised that these Britishers still talk as if they have some kind of a white man's burden to bear. And it is quite patronizing, and I am sure that this BS shall be called out for what it is. And the conditions in Arthur Road jail, I am sure they do comply with the highest human rights standards, is what my opinion is.
I don't know if we necessarily comply with the best human rights standards, but the point is that someone like Vijay Mallya should be facing justice, Jaiveer, at the end of the day. And the question here is not just about Vijay Mallya. There is now a string of fugitives that we're talking about here, that they're able to make these arguments in British courts, they're able to travel on revoked passports, they're able to take citizenship of Caribbean countries. What's going on here?
So, Nidhi, today these fugitives are practically cocking a snook at the Indian justice system, making a mockery of our system. Now, with due respect, adjournment hearings of Mr. Mallya are being packaged as government achievements, whereas the basic issue of accountability and answerability on behalf of Indian government stays, that how did these people escape? Mr. Mallya has escaped, Antigua has happened, Choksi has happened. No government agency is investigating, despite red flagging of these people ready to escape. How did they go abroad? Raghav is right to an extent when he says the laws are coming into place, but name one person, name officer who's been even called for summoning or questioning for this. Nidhi, today nation has lost 64,000 crores in banking scams, and the recovery of that money along with physical retrieval of these gentlemen is vital to ensure justice. Now, Mr. Bhattacharya said 14,000 crore. Now, the point is, this case has both criminal and civil aspects to it. Mr. Vijay Mallya has to be physically interrogated in India. Recovery of 14,000 crore will settle the NPA. But time and again, we are in this pattern or culture of impunity. You overlook, you allow them to escape, then they make a mockery of the passport abroad.
Raghav wants to come in.
Yeah, so I think it's a bit rich of the Congress party, although I didn't want this to be a political debate. It's a bit rich of a representative of the Congress party to be saying that these people have escaped. The fact is that all of these loans, all of these non-performing assets there, the foundation of this mess was laid when the UPA was in power, and I don't think privately this is something that Mr. Shergill cannot deny. And I'm sure he won't deny it. I'm sure he won't deny it.
No,
The problem is just this. The problem is that there was this rampant crony capitalism and these public sector banks. I mean, there is anecdotal evidence that ministers used to call these chairmen of public sector banks, and these loans were disbursed.
How did they escape the watchful eye of this very strong, powerful government?
It is really unfortunate
How did they
that
escape
Mr.
the eye?
Shergill would like to point fingers at the NDA, which has shown intent, and this is not something that we can say about the UP.
But one second, before this becomes a UPA NDA fight, Sherbi Pranang, the point is, how realistically can we expect that we will get any of these gentlemen back? Whether it is Vijay Mallya, whether it is Nirav Modi, Mehul Choksi. I mean, it is astounding to people that someone like Mehul Choksi, and apparently you had alerts issued for all these people, requests sent to Interpol, passports were supposedly revoked, but hey, Nirav Modi goes and travels to more than one country. The power of the Indian passport really is, quite something. So people are asking this question. I mean, how do they get away with this? And do we realistically expect that they'll come back?
Nidhi is absolutely correct.
I'm asking Mr. Pranang. Yeah.
Okay.
Nidhi, extradition is a complex process, and once somebody is outside the country, it's always tough. I think let's look at this from two aspects. The first aspect is the collective failure at a diplomatic level as well as at a law enforcement level, that all the fugitives that are in play right now have pretty much used a fairly standard playbook. There's nothing very novel about what they have deployed in order to escape the long arm of the Indian law. And yes, they have laughed at the Indian justice system, but the fundamental issue remains that we had a colossal failure on our part in preempting these things. And some of the simple aspects of trying to address the Article 3 of the Interpol when it comes to trying to take the ground of a politically motivated prosecution, etc. This is all very novice, basic aspects that could have been easily preempted. There's also a fundamental aspect that law enforcement, the Ministry of External Affairs, the Ministry of Home Affairs are all not working together. How difficult would it have been to be able to establish and create not just a barrack number 12, but actually showcase to the world a model barrack for bringing back fugitives out here in order to preempt some of the questions that foreign courts would raise. So coming back to your point on how likely are we to see them, it's a tough call. It's not going to be as easy as we are claiming it to be. And rather to say that the Fugitive Economic Offenders Bill, which will soon become an act, is going to be the be-all, end-all, one-stop shop solution for preventing this from happening in the future, definitely not. So we are pretty much at status quo from something like this happening again. And the chances of getting them back are fairly remote. It's going to be a concerted effort, not just at a law enforcement element, but also at a diplomatic element of getting them back. I think one of the co-panelists very rightly pointed out about the Home Secretary's order.
Yeah, no, so how does someone like Mehul Choksi become a citizen of Antigua, right under our very noses?
I think what I read in the paper today was that the Antiguan president has said that he will be reconsidering the whole matter, and
the point is he got the citizenship and he's there.
No, but he can obviously be he can be extradited in any case.
Is this not a
failure? I think we are missing out an element of a potential tip-off that's likely to have happened.
Which is?
What tip-off? I think now we are in the realm of speculation and conjecture.
He went and sought, well, well, I don't think there's speculation. Seeking citizenship of another country, there's nothing illegal about it. It's an absolute, it's a common practice. Even the United States provides for it. There's the EB-5 scheme, so on and so forth. The suspicion actually comes on the aspect that he applied for the citizenship in November, way ahead of the potential law enforcement action that came out in the last week of January. At least when the facts are looked together, it definitely raises a certain degree of suspicion against something that could have been preempted.